What is the best argument for the existence of God? Let's talk about it. Today I'm talking to one of my favorite apologists in Christianity. His name is Kyle Butt. You may not know about him. He's a lesser known apologist, but he's had high profile debates with people like Bart Ehrman.
Okay, now let me read a statement that you made in your Christmas Longings blog 2013.
Good grief, how much of my writings have you read?
Most of it.
Are they really that good?
Well, I was just thinking I have learned a lot more about suffering this last year, but if
Dan Barker, Michael Shermer, and others. I will link those in the description below. You should check him out. He works for Apologetics Press. I will link them in the description below as well. Has written many books, even more articles, does seminars, lectures all over the country. If you want the full conversations, they will be on my Patreon for as little as $5 a month. You can see the entire conversation of every conversation that I have and be blessed by those and support the channel and help me to grow the channel and have more awesome conversations and make more videos that are a blessing to people. Let me know what you think though. Do you agree with this argument that Kyle Butt is going to pose here? What are your thoughts on it, as well as some of the other things that we're going to talk about? I love y'all very much. Let's get into the video. I don't know what your favorite argument for the existence of God is. I don't know if it's even your strongest or just like your favorite one. You know, some people say Pascal's wager is my favorite, but it's not my strongest argument, that kind of thing. If you were to sit down with someone who's a skeptic, doesn't believe in God, and they said, what's one argument that you would give me to believe in God, what would you give them?
Sure. The design argument is absolutely my favorite. I think it's the easiest to understand. It's very simple, very straightforward. And what I love about it is there are so many iterations of it. You can talk about the design of the human body. You can talk about the design of animals. You can talk about the design of plants. You can go all the way back to creation and talk about the physical constants and the things that are a part of the universe that all have to be exactly right. Probably my most, of course, you don't quote scripture to prove anything when you're trying to to prove the existence of God. But I think Scripture says it so well when it says every house is built by someone, but he who built all things is God. You don't walk into the woods and see a house that has running water and electricity and a shingled roof and is functioning properly and think, oh, naturalistic processes did that. And I think that's the most intuitive. And one of the reasons why people would say, hey, I never knew the arguments for the existence of God, I just always felt like I knew God existed, was because those arguments are intuitive. Okay, this world looks like it's designed. And so the design argument to me is very, very strong, and you can go with it so many different ways, and it's so intuitively easy to grasp, and it cannot be answered. The responses I've seen that have attempted to challenge the design argument just are ineffective.
Interesting. I want to bring up one of the common ones that I've heard in a second, but before, the design argument, is it basically, am I reducing it correctly when I say it is the idea that there is evidence of intention in the process of creation or in creation itself? Or how would you agree with that?
Yes. And, you know, lots of times people get into some technical, there's the teleological argument, the ontological argument, the cosmological argument, stuff like that. But my concept, just understanding of the design argument is you have various pieces that are put together that function together in a way that doesn't happen without intelligence behind it, doesn't happen naturalistically. And so, of course, the age-old, iteration of the design argument is you walk into the woods and you see a watch laying on the ground. At that time, it was a pocket watch because there wasn't anything like a wristwatch. And so you see the watch. And what is different about the watch than the rock next to it? Well, the watch has springs. It has gears. It has hands. It has some type of function that keeps it running, energy intake, et cetera. And every one of the things has to work perfectly together in order for the watch to function. And so I think that's what's really being said with the design argument.
I remember watching you debate Dan Barker, and I don't think I'd ever heard the phrase laptop computer that many times in one sitting.
Right.
But I remember the laptop computer was the example at the time. That was back when we would still call them laptop computers.
Oh, absolutely.
Instead of just laptops or just computers.
Right. Amazing what has happened in, 15, 16 years.
Not even that long. But I that's what fascinates me about it. Now, here's one of the objections that I heard, that I've heard. People say, if there is evidence of design, then explain to me why human beings, our bodies are so faulty, or like, there's we have an appendix that we don't really have any use for. There seem to be flaws in the design, and so for them, and I'm sure you've heard this one, but for them that's evidence that this is like a more of a natural process rather than God designer. Have you heard that argument before? And if so, what do you say to that when they say, we get cancer, we get sick, this stuff happens all the time, where does the cold come from, things like that?
Yeah, the argument is called suboptimal design, where they say, okay, if everything's designed, why is the human lower back so insufficient to last 80 years without giving you pain, et cetera? The problem with that is twofold. Number one, okay, so you're going to say that the human brain is suboptimally designed. Well, just give me something in the universe designed by a human that's anywhere close to it. Okay, so you're going to say, well, it's so poorly designed that the most brilliant humans for the past 500 years studying it countless hours can't even begin to mimic its properties. Well, that seems like it might not be as suboptimal as you're suggesting.
Yeah.
And the second aspect of that is when God created everything at the beginning, he saw that it was very good. But when sin entered the world, so did lots of things that are not optimal. You had sickness, disease, death, etc. And so we're dealing with a system now that for the last 6,000 to 7,000 years has been corrupted by sin, and you would expect that to be the case if a bug gets in the system. And so when we see a computer running good software, but somehow a virus gets in, well, the software is not suboptimally designed. It's you now have an entity that's been inserted into the software that's messing things up. And I always think it's interesting when we are told vestigial organs and things like your appendix, well, if they were so good, then why often do you have an appendicitis? Does it need to be removed, et cetera? But what evolution really needs is not things that are getting worse and not functioning properly. What evolution should be showing us is we are growing new appendages and organs that would help us function to a higher level. And what vestigial organs and suboptimal function actually shows us is, okay, we had a system that was perfect. Sin and error got introduced to it. You now have mutations that are causing it to work less functionally, which is exactly what you would expect from a creation that's moving downward. But if you had an evolutionary process that's moving things upward, you should see nascent organs that are about to help humans not only breathe air, but breathe underwater or fly or run faster, etc.
So what do you say to the person that says, well, we will see that, but it's just going to take a long, long time. And even if we look at 100 years or 1,000 years of human skeletons or something like that, you definitely won't see it because it's just going to take, as they say, the one miracle or the one thing that they need is time.
Sure.
What do you say to the person who says, well, I think we will see that, we are going to see that, but it's just going to take time and it's going to be hard to really track that over time?
Sure. That's an interesting idea where time is the hero of the plot.
Yeah.
But what you would then just ask is, okay, do we see new genetic information being added that adds value and function in any system on the planet at the present? The answer to that is no.
Yeah.
And if we are then told, yeah, but you just need more time, okay, says who? If I were to say, hey, I'm going to prove something to you and I want you to invest in my company, and they said, okay, what experiments have you done? And you say, well, I've done all of these experiments. Have any of them given you a single inkling that this can be done? No, but they will in the future. Okay, so you're saying we don't have a record of it in the past. We can't see it now, but eventually, if we just had millions of years, it would happen. Well, I'll just tell you, if you gave me as much time as I needed to run a mile less than, in my case, it's going to be 6 minutes. It don't matter how much time you give me.
Yeah.
I'm never hitting under 6 minutes because there's some limitations. And so, if you look at the genome and what's said there, and lots of times, now I don't want to get too technical, but let's take Darwin's finches. Okay, their average beak size increased during 10 years of drought 0.12 millimeters. I don't know the exact, don't quote me on that. But they said, well, if they can increase in 10 years by 0.2 millimeters, what could they do in 100 years? What could they do in 1,000 years? What could they do in 1,000,000 years? Well, if you have 1,000 years of drought, they all die. But once you see that increase, okay, on a genetic level, there's a point at which that increase stops and the organism just simply dies. It doesn't cross the kind line. And so, they've been mutating fruit flies for the last 125 years. And they can get them to grow wings on their head. They can get them to grow wings where their legs are supposed to be, legs on their head where the antennae are supposed to be. At the end of the day, you get a new generation of fruit fly every 14 days, and we've mutated it with everything we can mutate it with. And after 125 years, which would be the equivalent probably of millions of years because we're getting to select which ones breed back.
Yeah.
What do you have at the end of that? A fruit fly. Because there's a genetic line that they just don't cross. Yeah. And so time doesn't give you time is not an entity that allows intelligent function that demands intelligence to be created by a system that doesn't have the ability to give you that. Yeah. So, so for instance, here's what I mean by that. You take a room full of Scrabble tiles and you blow it up 30 times, and you're not going to get the sentence, "It was the best of times, the worst of times." But in more times, not going to give you that. Now, you put intelligence into the system where the intelligence gets to pick the letters and put them out. Okay, no problem. You don't need that much time. Yeah. But the system itself doesn't have the capability to do that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What is it what I said? What is the biggest resistance to the design argument? What is the most common objection that you've heard that's been thrown out there?
Here's the most common objection. Things look designed. They look designed, and we can't blame a person for saying they're designed, but they're just not, because we know evolution is true.
That sounds like a lot like what they do with free will when they go, I know it seems like we all have free will, but we can't because atheism has to be true or determinism has to be true.
That's correct. And so here's my challenge. My challenge is, okay, if what we're discussing is evolutionary biology and you're suggesting that enough time would give us X or Y, show me one example in the real experimental world right now where actual functional complex information is being added to a genome somewhere. Can't do it. And then you say, all right, every example of functional complex information that we know of the origin, what's behind it? Intelligence, every time. And now here's what's interesting to me. Dan Barker, in his debate with Phil Fernandez, Phil Fernandez says, okay, if you're telling me the big explosion, the Big Bang, caused this universe and the amazing design we see in the physical properties, in the human brain, in all that, that's what you're saying. Give me one example of an explosion that brings about order. Okay, good question. Well, Barker sits and thinks for a minute. And now at the time, he said he has been in more moderated debates than any atheist in the world. He says, okay, I got one. He says, I got one. He said, that's a pretty tough question, but I got one. He said, when you drive your car to the grocery, your car is a combustible engine. The gas goes into the engine. The spark plug lights the gas. It's an explosion, causes the piston to go down. You drive because of explosions in your car. Fernandez says, that's true. He said, now who designed that car? Okay, so you just gave me, one of the leading atheists in the world, an example of an explosion that brings about order, and yet the only thing you could do with that was show me something that was designed by an intelligent being. Yeah. My point exactly.
That was a clip from my conversation. If you want access to the full conversation, it is on my Patreon for as little as $5 a month. You can see the extended full version of that and every other video that I do. There's a longer version. You can support the channel and help me have more awesome conversations, make videos that will bless people. God bless you all. Take care. Lord willing, I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.